This is Cannaramic, and we're bringing you cannabis like you've never seen it before. Today, we are talking with attorney Rob DePisa of the Cold Shots Law Firm, which is a national legal firm that handles a lot of things, and they have a specialty division handling cannabis. So we're excited to have you here, Rob, because I didn't even know that there was a need for a specialty cannabis division. You are over there, and you started your legal career at Cold Shots, doing, I think, real estate. And then you took a hard left and, decided you wanted to get into something a little bit more risky, more exciting, and cannabis. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I guess as risky as you could be being an attorney is being a cannabis attorney.
Yes.
So I started in real estate. I've been doing real estate for about 9 years now. And in 2013, I was approached by a pharmaceutical company that specialized in compounded painkillers with creams that would help with pain management. And they approached me about acquiring an existing cannabis alternative treatment center in the state of New Jersey and asked me to look into the regulations. I'd always been interested in cannabis from the beginning and just why cannabis was being separated out from the alcohol industry. And so that's when I first launched into the regulations in New Jersey. And, it was a much different political climate then. And that's when I kind of caught the bug, and I stuck with it. I monitored what was happening in other states around the country, and I had a bad health scare in my family with one of my children, and I think that when you go through something like that, you kind of look at what you do on a daily basis, and you try to find some more meaning and a way to give back in your job. And I'll never forget when I saw a video of a child who was suffering from epilepsy, and when that child was first given a dose of cannabidiol or CBD, and how you can count down the seconds for that child to stop having a seizure. And so that kind of paved the avenue for me, and I said, okay, this is a way I can give back, and I can use my legal knowledge and background to apply to something good.
Wow. It took you 5 years though, from 2013 when you first dived into it to 2018. What was it? The environment just wasn't ready for what you were looking to do at that time?
Yeah. Well, I like to say it didn't take me 5 years. It took the rest of the country 5 years.
Ooh.
Mostly the East Coast. So what had happened when I first launched into it in 2013 was there was only medical program. There still only is a medical program in New Jersey and New York at that time. Also, our governor was Chris Christie, and he just did not have the appetite to expand the program. It was a very limited program. I mean, in order for you to get your medicinal license in both New York and New Jersey specifically, you needed to be terminally ill, which means a doctor needed to say you had 12 months or less to live. You needed cancer. You had to have cancer. Crohn's disease was another one, but there really weren't many options for you. If you were suffering from an ailment and cannabis helped you, you needed to fit within those categories. And so that's what kind of suppressed the entire industry, because not everyone could sign up for these licenses, and therefore the demand wasn't there. And if the demand isn't there, then they're not going to ramp up the supply, and there's not going to be more licenses available.
Okay, so really, it was the environment in the state, and I guess eventually that really just kind of tamped down any movement in the cannabis space.
Exactly.
It's interesting because I think the landscape, especially as an attorney, you guys are always having to be very, very nimble. You actually say that it's a new legal landscape teeming with unforeseen obstacles. So how different and difficult is the cannabis legal landscape versus real estate or some other more established landscape?
It is completely different. And just in the law in general, laws don't change too often. When they do, it's a big deal, right? Everyone's like, oh my God, something in my practice area is changing. The difference and the way to distinguish cannabis law from any other area of practice is cannabis law is constantly changing. I like to say that it's an industry that's leading the laws. The industry seems to be one step ahead of the laws, and the laws are continuously trying to catch up and figure out how to regulate this industry.
Wow.
So what you find is that, and the exciting part of working in cannabis law is, week by week things can change, and you do need to be nimble, and you need to, I like to describe it as, everyone, especially in, the CBD industry, which I'm sure we'll get into later, everyone's running blind right now. And what you're trying to do is guide your clients the best you can in a direction where you think they're going to have the least pushback when the regulations do come out. So you're trying to anticipating, especially in CBD right now, what the regs will look like, and trying to guide people so that their business model reflects what the regs might look like, so that you have less issues where you're going to be in violation when those regs come out.
Oh yeah. So a lot of people walking on eggshells, pins and needles.
Yeah.
And you need a cannabis attorney. You can't just use your general counsel. Is that?
You can't. I absolutely agree with that. What you need is, depending on what you're doing, whether it's real estate, intellectual property, you need someone who has cannabis experience. You can't just go get an IP attorney to protect your trademarks. You need someone who knows exactly how the cannabis industry works, and someone who can help you achieve your goals within the box that cannabis businesses are being put in right now.
Right, and anticipating the future. So many entrepreneurs who look at cannabis, they imagine themselves as growers, right, or dispensary owners, what we call plant touching. They're going to build a field of cannabis on 12 acres of land that they inherited, or they're going to make CBD oils. So what are the considerations that businesses need to examine before moving into these type of plant touching ventures?
Absolutely. So if you're in a plant touching business, obviously, it all starts with the Controlled Substances Act, right? So the Controlled Substances Act is the act that deemed cannabis a Schedule I controlled substance with no medical purpose. And that kind of has led to all of the obstacles that we see in cannabis right now, especially if you're starting up a business, okay? So the important thing to know about the Controlled Substances Act is that the Controlled Substances Act permits the Department of Justice, also the DEA, to not only come in and shut down your business for being in violation of federal law, but they can seize your cash, they can seize the plants, and they can even seize the real property that you're using to run your cannabis business.
Wow.
So, I mean, if you recall, in the 90s, you used to see, on the news, the videos of the DEA busting up all of the dispensaries in California. Well, they were doing it because of the Controlled Substances Act. It permitted them to go in and shut down those dispensaries because they were in violation of the Controlled Substances Act federal law. So now you're scratching your head and saying, well, what's changed, right? Why isn't the DEA going in and busting up these plant touching businesses now? And the reason being is, in around 2014, there was a rider. Well, first of all, we'll back up. The Controlled Substances Act is enforced by the Department of Justice, the DEA, right? So the Department of Justice gets all of their funding every year from this act called the Appropriations Act. And essentially, it's just the budget for the Department of Justice. Each year, it gets renewed, and they say, okay, Department of Justice, you spent X last year. Here's the new Appropriations Act for 2019. Here's your new budget. So there was a rider around 2014 that was created to the Appropriations Act. And what that rider provided is that the Department of Justice couldn't use any of the funding they received from the Appropriations Act or their budget to enforce the Controlled Substances Act against state-compliant medical marijuana facilities.
Okay.
So the reason that's important is for two reasons, okay? So that explains why the Department of Justice can't use any of their money. While these dispensaries are technically in violation of the Controlled Substances Act, the Department of Justice can't use any of their funding to actually enforce it. So that's the thin line that's creating that separation there. And the important thing for plant-touching businesses to know is that rider only applies to medical cannabis facilities as of right now. So technically, if you're running an adult use operation in a state, even if you're in compliance, technically the Department of Justice can use the money from the Appropriations Act to enforce the Controlled Substances Act against you. However, just based on the current administration, they're just not doing it, okay? The important thing to know, though, is that safeguard only applies if you're a medical cannabis facility, whether you're a cultivator, processor, or dispensary. And the other thing that's important to know is that Appropriations Act and that rider gets renewed every year. So there's always a possibility that 1 year it doesn't get renewed. So you kind of need to go into it knowing that as one of the risk factors. And, you know, in addition to that, not only getting your business shut down, but that is also what creates all of the problems when it comes to, something simple as insurance for your business, right? So there was case law out of Michigan this past summer where a landlord owned a piece of property and an operator was running a grow facility there. And what happened was there was a mold issue because of all the moisture. Okay, so whether you own your building or not, this is important for you to know. And what happened was the owner of the property put in a claim against its insurance company to cover the mold, and the insurance company denied it. And what they claimed is that, and there's in most insurance policy, there's a line item that says if you're using the property in violation of federal law or for criminal activity, they can deny your claim. Well, the insurance company took the position that, okay, well, you're using the property to grow cannabis. That's in violation of the Controlled Substances Act. So we don't even need to insure you, even though you bought insurance and you have it. We don't need to do it. So it went to a lower court, and the lower court actually upheld it, which really got my attention because then I was getting concerned. And then it went to the higher court, the Sixth Circuit. What they said was that, similar to what we talked about earlier with the Controlled Substances Act, is if you're operating your property in compliance with state law, the insurance company cannot deny your claim.
Right.
If you're in violation of state law, though, they can certainly deny your claim.
And this particular facility, was it in violation or was it in compliance?
So the thing to know is fact specific, that facility was in violation. They were operating without a license. But the important takeaway from that case is just to know that the court set that precedent that if you are in compliance, then the insurance company cannot deny your claim.
Right.
So that's definitely an important thing that you need to keep in mind. And even if you're trying to buy property for your business to run a dispensary or cultivation facility, you need to know that. So when you buy property, what you'll usually purchase is something known as title insurance. And what it does is it insures you against issues, whether someone else is claiming they own the property, or there's lot line disputes where somebody's saying, oh, no, the line of the property is actually here and not where it is on the survey. And title insurance companies actually won't even insure these deals.
Wow.
And the reason they won't do it, a lot of the big ones won't do it, is because they're concerned about the Department of Justice coming in and seizing the property. Okay? So what's emerged, though, is you have these middle market title insurance companies, not the big ones, but the ones in the middle. And what they're doing is they're insuring your acquisition of the property. But what they're saying is, if the Department of Justice ever comes in one day and seizes this property, we're not going to insure you against that. We'll insure you against everything else.
Oh my gosh. So, wow. There are so many pieces. I mean, from what you started to say about how, there can't be, because of the budget appropriations, whether or not it's been given for that year, they are not allowed to enforce. They can't use their money for enforcement. But then the federal level says, well, we're not gonna really touch it under the Obama administration. And now we have the Trump administration, and we don't know what's what. There's so many different moving parts and gray areas that people have to maneuver through. And then on top of it, it's compounded, like you said, by issues with insurance, right? You can barely get insurance for these things, and then you get title insurance, but they won't actually cover you if you get the drug, the DEA comes in. And so it's a really, really tough space to be in. Why do people want to be in this space at this time?
I think it's just an exciting industry. It's very rare that in our lifetime that we get to see the birth of an entirely new industry. I mean, it's almost like, all of a sudden the alcohol industry has started. And the amazing thing about cannabis and this product is its ability to touch so many different industries, not only the medical industry, pharmaceutical, but also adult use. Think about the liquor industry as a whole, right? The brand, liquor stores, bars. Now put cannabis in there as well. And then this isn't even including, which I'm sure we'll go into later, the hemp industry, which touches even more industries.
Wow.
You know, I mean, it's a rare opportunity, and I think people are seeing the risk reward, and they're saying, okay, so I assume some risk, but there's potential for a big reward on the back end. And I think that's why people keep gravitating towards the industry.
So, but it's definitely companies that have a large financing. So
Oh yeah,
you can't do all of that and have somebody watching your back and without financing. So the intricacies you've talked about here, what really stands out to me is that most small businesses, traditional small businesses, really are not going to be equipped to participate in the cannabis industry. We talk about how it affects insurance and also banking, right? People can't get loans in this space because of these gray areas and the federal regulations. So, how do clients you work with navigate that legal hurdle with regard to financing?
Okay. So what I did before we actually launched the group here, is the banking issue I felt was just a showstopper, right? I mean, without a bank, not only, put financing aside and being able to borrow money, but just to be able to deposit money into a bank is so critical for all of these businesses and our clients' business. So what I did was I went out and I met with every single, I didn't go to the big banks because I knew that they're not going to touch it. And I focused on state chartered banks and also credit unions. Because similar to title companies, these middle market players are stepping up to the plate. And a lot of them reiterated the same concerns that, they're FDIC insured, they don't want to lose that insurance. But what it comes down to really is that banks are notoriously conservative. There actually is guidance out there that tells banks exactly how to act as a depository for cannabis businesses. The problem is the cost, all right? So there is a authority called FinCEN. It's the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and this is the entity of the federal government that regulates financial crimes, right? They actually came out with specific guidance for banks in the country stating that, if you want to act as a depository for cannabis businesses, this is exactly how you do it. But the problem with it is that it did say that, it puts the burden on the banks to make sure that each business they take on as a client to hold their money is in compliance with state law. So the banks don't want to pay that cost to audit all of these cannabis businesses to make sure they're in compliance with state law. Also, not only do they not have the capacity, but in most cases not the expertise to know all of the different requirements of each different state. So this is really what caused banks to kind of take a back seat. The banks that are stepping forward, that are representing our clients, a lot of them aren't advertising what they do. It took a lot of phone calls and speaking with people, but what they've done is they'll act as a depository. So meaning they'll take your money and they'll deposit it in a bank account for you. They're not really comfortable with lending money for you to build out a facility yet. Some are, but not most are. Or to borrow money to actually buy property. They'll take on your money, but you will pay for it if you're a plant touching business. Because what they do is they pass on their costs associated with auditing you onto the end client cannabis business. So I've had banks quote something, it's like $2,500 a month just to hold your money for you, and then in additional $2,500 a year for them to come in on an annual basis and audit you to make sure that you're in compliance with state law. So that's an extra approximately $25,000 a year, especially when you're a new business starting up, that you just don't want to eat those kind of costs. 4 years, you're talking about $100,000 just to have a bank account.
To have a bank account. And what about like credit cards? Being able to accept credit card transactions, that's a whole nother piece too.
That's a whole nother, it's a whole nother issue. And what I'm seeing, a lot of the banks have software now where they're using artificial intelligence to monitor transactions. And if a transaction seems like it was used, a debit card, or was used to actually acquire cannabis, they are shutting down accounts. What I've seen what I've seen emerge a lot when it comes to dispensaries is two methods have emerged. I can't speak to the legality, but what I'm seeing is people will go to a dispensary, and what they're doing is when you swipe your debit card, what you're actually doing is you're not purchasing cannabis, you're purchasing a gift card for that dispensary or that establishment, and then you're using that gift card to purchase the cannabis. Or what I've also seen emerge is it's almost like an ATM machine at the checkout, where you swipe your debit card, and what you're doing is you're not exactly purchasing cannabis with that debit card. You're swiping your card and you're taking out cash, and you're even charged an ATM fee, and then that cash is used to purchase the cannabis. But all you're doing on your end as a consumer is swiping your card, or behind the scenes, you've actually made an ATM withdrawal and purchased the cannabis. Those are the two methods that I've seen emerge. Whether or not they're in compliance with banking law, I'm just not going to go into that, but that's what I'm seeing.
So people are jumping through hoops to try to be in the business and try to kind of, I guess, weather this period of uncertainty, hoping that in the near future things will level out and it'll be clearer. Is it easier for hemp specific businesses that are not marijuana, cannabis, but more so no less than 0.3% THC businesses?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that because it really depends. So, everyone knows about the Farm Bill. We can go into some detail on it later on, but if you are in a hemp business where you are growing hemp and you are selling raw hemp flower through interstate commerce, well, then there is federal authority to say that you're permitted to actually do that.
Okay.
The problem is the cannabinoid, the CBD industry is still completely up in the air. And there really aren't any rules or regulations that are governing the sale of cannabinoids, specifically cannabidiol, CBD, through interstate commerce. So could a bank reject you as a client if you're in the CBD or cannabinoid industry? Certainly, because there is no federal authority right now to permit the sale and purchase and distribution of CBD products through interstate commerce. So it kind of depends whether you're purely in the hemp growing and sale of raw flower, or if you're in the cannabinoid industry. It also depends if you're completely intrastate. If you're operating within one state, okay, some states have pilot programs where they have hemp pilot programs that govern, the cultivation, processing of hemp materials. So that's a little different. But I mean, everyone knows if you want to scale your operation, people are looking to be able to do that through interstate commerce and from coast to coast. And as of right now, there is no authority for you to do that. And therefore, a bank could reject you if you're in the cannabinoid business and not just the plant hemp business.
So people who are selling CBD oil on the internet, that is interstate commerce. And right now there is no regulation. So people are just kind of like operating and hoping that maybe they don't get caught or no one notices.
It kind of goes back to what we said at the earlier on in the call, where it's the industry leading the laws. There is no federal authority from the FDA that would permit you to sell cannabinoid products through interstate commerce. And when I say that, I'm really talking about the products that we're seeing being sold online, the tinctures, the food products. I'm not talking about the pharmaceutical side, because there is authority. And you could see GW Pharmaceuticals was the first pharmaceutical company that got the first FDA approved drug with CBD in it to help treat epilepsy. Okay. So in order for them to do that, they went through clinical trials, they spent a lot of money, and they received FDA approval for that. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what we're seeing now, where you can log in and you can Google a CBD product and you can just pull that up and purchase it through interstate commerce. There is no federal authority that actually permits the sale or the purchase of that product. So it's important that people know that. And it also goes back to where we're talking about guiding people. The FDA has come out with indications as to who they're going after and who they're not so much paying as much attention to. And it comes down to them protecting consumers. If you are making health-related claims over the internet and you are telling consumers, this, even testimonials from people, this helped cure my cancer, or, I used to have pain, but now I take this, that is misleading, because unless you can show that you've been FDA approved and you have the research to back that up. Let's not forget, we have people out there that are taking drugs that are approved by doctors where they're controlling the dosage, and they're FDA approved drugs. The last thing the FDA wants to see is for people to stop taking the prescription medications because they're being misled by businesses who are making health-related claims. So stay away from health-related claims, stay away from purchasing products through companies that are making health-related claims, because the FDA has clearly shot warning signs out to those types of businesses.
Okay, so you may be able to fly under the radar as long as you're not including testimonials, health-related claims, and as long as you have something like a disclaimer on your site that says, "We are not giving you medical advice."
Yeah.
Go to your doctor.
Yeah.
There's no clinical trials behind this particular product.
Again, yes. So you're not you're not going to have you're not necessarily going to have a light shined on you, because that's where the FDA has shown their focus is. But what you're doing, there really is no authority to permit you to do it.
Right.
And that's important to know. Listen, the FDA has made it clear that they're working on this, but the timetable isn't, next month. I mean, they're going to start having hearings next month, but the FDA commissioner, who now is no longer with the FDA, but when he first came out, he was thinking 1 to 2 year timetable, and said if he thinks it's going to take longer than 2 years, then he would ask for Congress to intervene so he can get it done quicker. So this is the timetable we're dealing with. And in cannabis, I like to say cannabis is like dog years. 1 or 2 years in cannabis is like 5 years, 7 years. So we definitely still have a wait ahead of us.
Yeah, I was talking to Dr. Raphael Meshulam, who is the father of cannabis research, and, just pointing out the time difference between when he first isolated THC to, just a few years ago. There just really has not been huge steps in cannabis research because of, I guess, the need for clinical trials, which no one seems to be motivated to do. So like you said, it's in dog years here, or I don't even know years, 50 years to get one thing done. Epidiolex came out last year, and it's like the first drug that's like been approved with CBD. So what about if you're not in a plant touching business? Is it different for non-plant touching businesses, which, that's called the ancillary market, correct?
Yes, exactly right. It is different. It's different because all of the, so long as you have nothing to, like, let's say you're in the packaging industry, you're not actually touching the plant, you're not transporting the plant, you're not growing the plant. If you were in an ancillary business, well, then these risk factors don't necessarily all apply to you, because you're not selling or dealing with products that are a controlled substance, and I often find that a lot of people might be in different areas of business, and they say, well, I want to become a cultivator. Well, if you're not a botanist and you don't have that type of experience, I wouldn't recommend that you do a complete career change to enter the cannabis world. You don't need to do that to be in cannabis. The most successful people I've seen in cannabis already have a specific expertise, and all they've done is pivot towards cannabis. They said, okay, what have I been doing my whole life? Where am I an expert? And now how do I apply that to cannabis? Okay, whether you're IT services, packaging industry, think about what you're doing right now, something you're good at, where you have connections in, and think about a need in the cannabis industry that you see, and pivot your existing business to market towards the cannabis businesses, and saying, here, I'm going to step up, and I know there's this gap in this industry, I'm going to fill it.
That's what you did when you created the cannabis division at the firm. The little pivot.
Yeah, essentially.
So let's talk a little bit more about the Farm Bill. So the 2018 Farm Bill was a big breakthrough. I remember reading about it. It was like, oh my God, we're finally ready to go. What specifically did that bill do? in regards to removal of the CSA and all those other components? What did it do for us?
Okay, so you're 100% right, Felicia. Everyone thought that the Farm Bill was going to be the answer to all of our prayers, and that it would completely solve the cannabinoid industry and hemp. And what it did was it fell short of our expectations in the sense that what it does permit is it permits the cultivation and sale of hemp products through interstate commerce. Now, the key, though, is the plant needs to have less than 0.3% tetrahydrocannabinol, which is THC, okay, in order for it to fall within this exception to the Controlled Substances Act. So, if you have a hemp plant with less than 0.3% THC, what the Farm Bill did was it removed it, okay, from that Schedule 1 status, and that permits you to actually cultivate and sell raw hemp products, flower, through interstate commerce. But when it came to the derivatives, the cannabinoids from that hemp, okay, which is, the cannabinoids are obviously it's the secretion from the flower, from the hemp plant, okay, and that's obviously we know CBD is one, THC is another, but there's really 85 plus different cannabinoids in cannabis plants. And what it said was that when it comes to adding cannabinoids to food products, drink products, topicals, anything for human consumption, we're not going to touch that. That's reserved solely for the FDA, and that falls under the FDCA, which is the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. And what the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act is an act that was created in the 30s. And what it did was it empowered the FDA with the authority to regulate food products, medical devices, drugs that are going to be sold in the United States. So what the Farm Bill did was, okay, hemp products, 0.3% or less THC, yes, now you can sell those through interstate commerce. But when it comes to cannabinoids, such as CBD, that is completely reserved for the FDA under their authority, under the FDCA. And then everyone was waiting, again, with bated breath to see, okay, what is the FDA going to come out and say about all of this, right? Are they going to open the door? I remember, it was almost like Christmas morning when I heard that the commissioner had posted a public statement, the commissioner of the FDA, about cannabinoids. And the hope was that he would deem them as the term called GRAS, G-R-A-S, but it pretty much means that the product would be generally safe for human consumption, and he did not do that. And it's important, and the reason he didn't do that, I understood as I read through the statement, and what he said is, there currently is an avenue for you to introduce cannabinoids for human consumption, and reference what GW Pharmaceuticals did. I got a little concerned, to be honest, because then I said, well, is the expectation that if I want to incorporate a cannabinoid into a soft drink, that I need to go through the clinical trials that GW Pharmaceutical did and invest that kind of money, because it'll chill the entire industry, right? Who has that upfront money, and who's going to make that huge of an investment? But when the commissioner's statement went on, is what he said is, what we're here primarily is to protect consumers from health-related claims. And we are going to look into making a more streamlined process for cannabinoids to be incorporated into food products and cosmetics. And then after that initial statement, a lot of turmoil happened. He ended up stepping down from his position. But further statements were made after that gave us more clarity. And what he said is, and it makes sense, what they have to do is they have to preserve the incentive for pharmaceutical companies to continue to pour money and research into cannabis, because that's the only way you're going to get these amazing drug products out of cannabis, okay? And if the FDA permits anyone to just put cannabinoids into drinks without doing any clinical research, well then there goes the incentive for a pharmaceutical company to invest in a drug and get a patent on it, because they know they're going to make the money on the back end. When they get the FDA approval, they have a patent on that drug, and they'll have X amount of years to be able to just sell that drug, okay? So what the commissioner said was that where it's looking is that they might reserve the higher dosages of CBD products for pharmaceutical companies and pharmaceutical drugs to keep that incentive there for them to continue to research this plant and see what it can and maybe cannot do. And then it will reserve the lower dosages for human consumption, soft drinks. And those lower dosages would have an envisioned more streamlined process to get approval from the FDA for your products. So that's what they indicate.
Dose? What's a lower dose? I mean, yeah, I see bottles of CBD oil with 1,000 milligrams of CBD.
1,500 sometimes.
1,500. You know, what's the lower dose? It seems to me that this is reserving I guess the benefits and the financial, viability of the cannabis industry for people who are major multi-billion-dollar corporations, and leaving smaller businesses out of the opportunity to participate.
Yeah. First of all, you make some really excellent points. And, it's almost countercultural to the cannabis industry, right? Because cannabis is, I've always viewed it as the anti-pharma, right? The anti-big pharma. It is natural plant. It's not made and cooked up in some lab somewhere. The focus and where people are trying to keep cannabis is that this should be an industry for everyone.
Right.
Not just for the super wealthy or the very large companies, but the problem is the unintended result of all of these legal challenges, the inability to get banking, the inability to get financing, creates this perverse result of you actually need to have a lot of money to be in it. And they're working on fixing this. Obviously, the banking issue is working on getting worked out and everything like that. But this is the result that we're seeing here in the cannabis industry. So we'll see. And listen, and I get it. The lower dosages obviously might not meet the needs of people, and they're going to have to go and actually get a prescription. But the other concern is if you have lower dosages in a bunch of different products, and you are ingesting CBD drinks, CBD food, you're actually giving yourself a high dosage. And I just think it isn't.
So people have to spread it out. They got to spread it out.
But it's also important that if you're doing that to treat an ailment, that your doctor knows about it, right? He knows exactly what product you're taking, and so that you can properly figure out like how much CBD are you ingesting, because there are some studies that say it can cause liver damage if you are taking too much. Whether or not those are going to be verified, we'll see. But that's what
the World Health Organization said that CBD is safe up to very high doses. It's just, I guess it could be a bit frustrating for folks because, there's so many hoops and ladders and obstacles to be able to get through. And like you said, here we have cannabis, which is supposed to be, for the people. We want the industry to move forward. We want, there to be proper testing and trials so that people will know how they can best use this for their health. We want it to be regulated to the extent that everyone can participate, but it seems as if the more we go in the direction of regulation and, having the government get involved, the more it's taking it away from opportunities for, the wide swath of people to be able to participate. It's catch-22.
It really is, and that is why I think you're seeing a lot of the big money in the plant touching industry, and then you're seeing the ancillary industry as being a more viable entry point for smaller businesses to enter the market. And it's just because of that upfront cost and that threshold that all of these legal challenges present. It's unfortunate.
So we know that the FDA, we were waiting for the word to come down. They had a change in the FDA. I don't know if I've kept up with the news. Is there someone newly appointed there yet, or are we still waiting?
Well, so there's an interim commissioner that's been appointed for the time being. I'm not looking too much into this commissioner and what his feelings on cannabinoids are, because we need to wait for the more permanent commissioner to come in to really make a judgment call as to what their position is, what route they're going to take, whether they're going to continue with this current pathway that's been laid out, where there's going to be public hearing in May, and then this potential split between higher dosage and lower dosages. We could have a new commissioner come in after this interim is out and come up with a completely different plan. So that's why, the CBD industry is so in flux right now. It is just completely up in the air, and just every time an announcement comes up, it's just more gray. There's not enough clear cut.
So I guess the moral of the story is, hold on. This is a roller coaster ride. Strap yourself
Hold on tight.
Really tight, because we never know which way we're going here. And you have got a lot of work to do on your side, trying to keep your clients, from going to jail or, their businesses. Take it. I mean, this is really heavy duty stuff, but you said it's really exciting at the same time. You enjoy it.
It is. It is. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, more power to you and Cole Schatz and all of you attorneys out there who are helping everyone kind of work through this all. Hopefully in the next 2 years, maybe we may.
Hopefully less.
Yeah, hopefully less, and we can see where this is going, and hopefully it'll be something that everyone can play and enjoy the benefits. And thank you so much, Rob. I appreciate you so much today.
Thank you, Felicia. I appreciate having me.